So hello, I'm Avery Kaplan. I'm the comm officer at Prism Comics, and we're speaking today with Kendra Wells about real hero shit.
Yay!
So my first question is, what was the genesis of real hero shit?
Um, I mean, it really, it started with a couple drawings of the main character Eugene, one of the main characters Eugene, who, if you are unfamiliar, he's this purple horned playboy prince, and I had been drawing like just like doodling really. This was like late 2017, maybe early 2018. And I was just like messing around and I had this idea in my head. I'm like, well, what if there was like a real like a demonic prince playboy character, but who's a real mama's boy and who like wants to go on adventures and stuff. And at the time I was like dealing with some emotional stuff. I was pretty depressed. And I started watching the second campaign of Critical Role, and also started a new save file on Dragon Age Inquisition, which is one of my favorite video games of all time. And between the two of those things, I kind of had this aha moment where I was like, oh, I can just make a story like this. Like, there's something really special about both of those properties where it's like it's medieval fantasy. It's this, it has this like sort of rich, history, this genre. But in particular, Critical Role and Dragon Age do a really good job of kind of giving it a very modern feel and a very modern slant and like sense of humor. And it was the first time where, oh, my cat's in the background. Sorry. It was the first time where I was like, oh, I could just like, I don't have to make this like very serious Tolkienian epic adventure. I could just like make a bunch of jokes and like have it be a little sexy and a little fun. And it was just like the first time that I had ever like thought about it like that. And it was so freeing to be like, oh, I could just make the story that I would want to read, and that's totally valid.
That's fantastic. So my next question is, how did Iron Circus become involved?
So Iron Circus was like my very first choice in publisher. I've actually I was a part of their Smut Peddler anthology back in 2014. So I'd worked with them before in like a smaller capacity. But I love what they do. I love what they publish. I love their MO of like really like gunning for and throwing their weight behind stories that I think are a little too out there for traditional publishing. Like they're totally unafraid of doing something that other publishers might consider to be super niche or super like a little too raunchy, a little too out there, And I was like, from the beginning, I was like, I think Iron Circus is it, but like, let me let me shop it around a little bit. But I submitted it to Iron Circus first. They got back to me in like a week and they were like, yeah, absolutely, we're interested. Let us know if you want to move forward with this. And I was like, well, let me look around a little bit more. Like, thank you, but let me just make sure. And it just became super clear that like they were really the only place for real hero shit.
That's awesome. I love them. So
I love them. I've had a wonderful time with them. They're an excellent group of people.
it's awesome to hear. This will relate to your D&D guides back there. Is Eugene a tiefling?
For legal reasons, I think no, but he was directly inspired by the idea of tieflings. D&D is a huge, like, I mentioned Critical Role already, but D&D is a huge influence on real hero shit as a story. And I think I was pulling from a lot of inspiration from D&D, and also just like the D&D campaigns that I've been involved in, that my friends have been in. And I love the idea of that, like building a like an adventuring party from like all over the place. Like I feel like that's a very unique, like you I don't know, you get that in other stories, but there's something really unique about the way that D&D kind of like has like the class building and the different species and the different races and stuff, that I definitely wanted to pull from. But Eugene has a mysterious past. I can't really say, he has a we kind of start the story with this sort of like, oh, like why do you look like that, Eugene? Like he's the only guy in the entire story who is this like tiefling-esque person, and it's sort of a mystery that hasn't really been fully explored yet. So I'm really hoping that I can in the future maybe make some more stories about these guys, and maybe delve into Eugene's past a little bit.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
when I can tell any viewer who hasn't had the chance to read it yet, you have questions you'll want answered when you finish, but in the best way.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the origin of this? Is it Zisegda gender wheel? Did I say that right?
Jegda, yeah.
Zeg-
So I mean, I'm a non-binary person. I use they them pronouns. And I knew right off the bat that I was like, when I was developing the sort of the main character team, Hocus Peregrine, who is the cleric, the healer, also the like sort of heavy tank character. I initially, when I was designing them, I used they them pronouns for them. And I don't know, it was good, but I wanted to push it a little, like it just didn't feel quite right. And a friend of mine, Maya Kobabe, uses am air pronouns, and I talked to them a little bit about like about neopronouns, about that kind of thing. And I was like, I'm developing this character, like, I was kind of picking her brain a little bit. And I felt like I wanted to kind of, I don't know, like I wanted to have this be a sort of a way to explain neopronouns and non-binary genders to an audience that might not have a lot of experience with that, or might not know a lot of people who use those kinds of pronouns. And I thought the gender wheel was just kind of a good visual for it, where it's like there's some overlap. It's not a hard and fast rule. I think there's Hocus is someone who is AMAB, who's assigned male, would have been assigned male at birth in like sort of our, real life society, but identifies as non-binary, doesn't identify with either man or woman. So he has AMS pronouns with an E. And the rest of them are like os, os, ems. Like I thought that it was sort of. I'm hoping to bring more of that in potential future stories as well. But it was really important to me to really like nail it down. And I was worried when I was developing. I'm like, is this like too simplistic? Like I was doubting myself a little bit. But the feedback I've gotten on it has been really great and very validating. So I'm really happy that I was able to include that kind of thing.
Yeah, I loved it. Well, and I love that there's the conversation where you get to see the characters model like what a conversation like that looks like. I really liked that a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was also important for me to, the conversation happens with Eugene, and it was important to me also to kind of telegraph that like Eugene's a bit of a dingus, but he's not malicious. Like he immediately goes, okay, well, you took the time to explain this to me, so I'm going to use this properly, and then doesn't mess it up for the rest of the story. I thought that was a really important thing to be like, Eugene, like he sucks, but like he's a good guy deep down.
Yeah. It was the perfect tone. I loved it.
Thank you.
So Annie is a mage, but a secular one. Where did this concept come from?
I don't know. I think I'm really interested in the way that magic is built into medieval fantasy stories. I love like sort of figuring out the sort of like the finer points of it, and also kind of threading that needle of explaining just enough without like getting super granular with it, or not just being like, I don't know, magic just exists, like like and I thought it was interesting, in this sort of D&D based model. You have clerics and you have wizards and you have warlocks and stuff, and each of them kind of pull their magic from a different place. And I wanted to kind of have this I don't know, I wanted to explore that a little bit. And within the story, like you end up hearing more about it, but Ani mentions that she's kind of an anomaly. Like she's the majority of magic users in this universe. There aren't that many of them, and the ones that do exist tend to be religious mages for reasons. And I thought it was really interesting to have this sort of wizard type character who's like, I just read a bunch of books. Like I sat down and I really, really worked at it, and I figured out how to do this on my own, and I'm very proud of that. And I don't know, I think it suits her character really well. She's incredibly tenacious and incredibly like very, very smart. And like a bit of a jerk about it, but like I really liked that basis of her character, and it provides a little bit of tension between her and Hocus, who is extremely religious, and that's a huge part of his life. So I love the idea, and I don't know, there's so much more that I want to. I hate that I keep being like, I hope that I get to do more, like, but I do, and I hope that I can explore the sort of dynamics of magic building and where that comes from, the sort of element of it. A really good example of the magic that it inspired me, the sort of build of this magic, was in the Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss. The idea of sympathetic magic and pulling sort of energy from one thing and transferring it into another because it has to like come from somewhere. That was a big inspiration for the sort of almost like very like naturalistic feel of like where this is coming from.
Very cool. Okay, so food is important to both your characters and the average tabletop RPG game. Is there a certain snack that you like to have when playing tabletop RPGs?
Oh man, I honestly think about this a lot. I'm a huge, I wouldn't consider myself a foodie, but I love food and I love eating. I think it's an important balance to have both savory and sweet snacks, because in my experience, when you're sitting down to play a game, especially if it's going to be a long session, if you have too much of one kind of snack, you're going to get kind of sick of it by the end and like, get a stomach ache or just not feel well. So I think it's a nice balance to have like some savory like chips or like Dorito type snacks, and then maybe a little bit of candy, like a little bit of gummies or something for sugar, and then maybe like a little bit of fresh, like maybe make some carrot sticks. I don't know, like you got to balance it out and make sure that you're not going to be totally on the floor by the end of your session.
Well, you've got to balance your snacks just like you have to balance your magic, right?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, so this one you've sort of alluded to, but just to ask it directly, is there any chance that we'll see a sequel to Real Hero Shit?
I'm really hoping so. Nothing is set in stone. I'm not just being coy about it. Nothing is set in stone yet. But given the feedback that we've gotten and the reception to the Kickstarter has been absolutely incredible, I'm very much hoping so. I have like probably 3 or 4 books of content like kicking around in the back of my brain. I've got this big Google Doc full of like world building stuff. I've been like keeping notes on my phone. So there's a lot more story to tell. I kind of purposefully wrote the book to have like a little bit of a cliffhanger to like more story to tell, but when I was writing it, I had no idea if I was going to get more than 1 book, so I wanted to make sure that it was a solid standalone book with like potential for more.
I love it. Okay, so my last question is just, is there anything else that you'd like me to include?
I think that that's basically it. The Kickstarter is running until October 29th. We hit our very first stretch goal, and we're almost at our second stretch goal. We have a set of illustrated prints that we are doing based on the chapter break illustrations in the book. That was our first stretch goal. And we're also hoping to have a set of enamel pins based on each of the 4 main characters. Those are the subsequent stretch goals. So I'm really, really hoping we get all 4. So if you're interested, please spread the word and, pledge and let anybody know. If you have a D&D party full of, queer kids like I know and love, let them know and maybe they'll pledge and enjoy.
I promise I will respond to this book. It is
awesome.
Very much. Well, thank you so much for talking with us today. And I hope that everyone goes over to Kickstarter and supports Real Hero Shit.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you.
Awesome.